In 3.17, we gained access to the new Atlas passive tree. Now, the new Atlas passive tree has greatly affected many of the farming strategies that we've been farming for multiple leagues now, but with the new tree, we've also seen a few new farming strategies pop up, and one of those new strategies, and the topic of today's video, is called Boss Rush. Now, I'm pretty sure most of you are quite aware of what Boss Rush is, but for those of you who are still unsure, TLDR, you juice the drops from map bosses as much as you possibly can, and then you ignore everything else in the map, you just rush to the boss, kill the boss, loot, and leave. The faster you go, the more currency you make per hour. Throughout the league, many people have told me that Boss Rush is a really good farming strategy, and they've used it to make a ton of currency, but I was curious to know exactly how good it really was. So for this video, I've done 50 Eater of World rotations, which means that I farmed 50 Screaming Invitations. Over 28 maps per invitation, that's 1,400 maps that I farmed, just to see how good Boss Rush really is. Hey guys, Snish here, and before we get into the details of the video, I just quickly want to tell you what the structure is going to be like. Since most of you already know what Boss Rush is, we're going to start off with the loot, so you have everything you need right at the start. And then for those of you who want to know how I set everything up, we'll talk about that next. And then right at the end, we'll discuss what you need to know or what you need to do to know if the strategy is right for your character. So without any further delay, let's get into it. Okay, so this is the loot from 1,400 maps or 50 full sets. As you can see, we have 50 Screaming Invitations and 50 Roaring Invitations, even though we really only did these for the Screaming Invitations. And then everything else that dropped while we were doing this. I'm not including normal map drops, I'm not including currencies, I'm not including essences, nothing else. Everything in this tab, which dropped from the boss of the map only, is what I'm including in our results. To make this a little bit easier, I have made a spreadsheet with everything, so we can take a look at that. So, if we take a look at the results from our 50 sets, we got our 50 invitations, which roughly go for about 90 C a pop. It's also important to note that I didn't really take bulk into consideration, so all the prices you see here, you'd probably be able to get a little bit more if you sell them in bulk. So 50 invitations at 90 C, then the secondary invitation I just listed at 4 C. It seems this is what they go for. I don't know if they'll sell, but you know, we have to include it in our numbers. Then Conqueror maps, we got 57, listed for 26 C per map. Elder Guardians, almost 90 Elder Guardian maps, listed for 14 C per. Shaper Guardians, 83, listed at 8 C. Then the Synth maps, apart from Cortex, all seem to go for about 33 C per. Except Rewritten, it seems that it goes for 35. Changing that to 33 shouldn't change all that much. And then I got 3 Cortexes, which go for 2x a pop. The ratio that I'm using is 152 chaos per exalt. And then we got a few of the invitations down here. The big invitations, or the invitations making us a lot of currency here, are the Elder Slayers and the Twisteds, which ends up to be 10,807 chaos. And if you divide it by the current ratio, that's 71x. So for those of you curious about the numbers, in 1,400 maps or 50 sets, I made 71x, which comes down to about 7.7 C per map. Now 7.7 C doesn't sound crazy per map, but if you consider the fact that it takes me an average of 35 seconds per map to run these, it adds up quite quickly. Now, I have an estimated X per hour here for my build. This number you should ignore. This number doesn't mean anything for you. At the end of the video, I talk about how you can estimate to know exactly how much you'll make per hour on your character, but I will say that my Slayer Cycloner doesn't have great single target and it wasn't set up optimally for the strategy, so I'm quite sure if you min-max Boss Rush, you can push this number up quite a bit higher, but with my current setup, I got about 5.1x per hour. Now, if you want to take a look at the sheet in more detail, I'll leave a link to it down below in the description. Let's take a look at how I've set up the Atlas Tree. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail with the Atlas Tree. I'll leave a video by Dire Grey discussing the bossing Atlas Tree in detail, but I'll give you the TLDR of why we do what we do. So, one of the most important things and what allows you to permanently sustain maps even if you just kill the map boss without rolling your maps are these nodes. The 2% chance for connected maps to drop or connect maps to drop from map bosses is very big. We take every single one of these nodes down here. This allows us to even run our maps white, ignore every monster, just go to the boss, kill the boss, and still be able to over sustain maps like I have. Then, apart from that, we also take all the chance for map drops to be duplicated on the tree, or as many as we can. I don't take all the nodes, I just take as many of them as I can. This allows you to have a high chance for when you drop an Elder Guardian or a Shaper Guardian to duplicate the map, so you get twice as much value out of it. Then, apart from that, we just take all the bossing nodes. Depending on which boss you want to farm or which invitation you want to farm, you would either take these two nodes down here or these two nodes on this side. It really depends on personal preference. When I started the strategy, the Eater of World invitations were a little bit more expensive than Exarch, and that's why I've set it up this way. Then we grab this side of the wheel for high chance for Conqueror map drops. We pick up this cluster up here for higher chance for Shaper and Elder Guardian map drops, and then we pick up all of this for Synthesis map drops. As you can see, I also have essences on the tree, which I haven't included in the results at all. If the essence was on my way while I was rushing to the boss, I would stop and kill the essence. I've made a lot of extra currency farming the essences on the side, but they haven't been included in our results. So the point is, you don't need a perfect tree, right? All these points they don't affect the numbers at all. So even if you don't have a fully set up Atlas tree, this is still a strategy that you can do. You could spend these points any way you want. You could do essences or just leave them out or spec into anything else. Another thing that I want to say is you are going to be getting an absolute ton of master missions because you complete maps so quickly. So if you're target farming any master specifically and you want some missions, spec into their increased chance for master mission on map completion down here. For most people, I assume that would be Alva because you're juicing. I like farming my own Ashlings, and that's why I've spec'd into this down here. That is definitely something I recommend you do. You go through 100 maps really quickly and you'll get a ton of master missions. Okay, I think that's the tree. I will leave a link to it down below in the description. Now, just a quick warning, this tree is set up for when you farm the maps, the map bosses, and then sell the boss maps themselves. If you want to do the bosses, you got to change a few things around on the tree. Just be aware of that this tree isn't set up for you to do the bosses, it's just to farm the maps or the invitations for the bosses. So now that we've gone over the tree, let's talk about what maps we do and how I've set up my favorite system. Now, the best layout to do this on, and the layout that many people are using, is the City Squares map layout. Now, you could, like most people, run just City Squares and then favorite Promenade or another map, and then buy your City Squares in bulk and sell them to someone else, or sell the Promenades that you get from City Squares to people who are running Promenades. But since you complete a map you complete 2 maps a minute, and people running Promenades take, 20 minutes to complete their fully juiced maps, I saw a problem with that cycle, and I assumed that if enough people start doing this strategy, you're gonna get a shortage of City Square maps to buy in bulk. And buying maps in bulk is always painful. So what I've decided to do is, I've decided to favorite City Squares on half of my favorite slots, and then to decide on a map connected to City Squares to favorite as my second map. And that would be the Bazaar map. As you can see, the remaining favorite slots I used to favorite Bazaar. Now, City Squares is definitely faster than Bazaar to do, but if you bounce between Bazaar and City Squares, you will be able to permanently self-sustain these maps and you'll never have to touch trade at all. That means that once you've set up your Atlas tree, the strategy is completely free. It's 100% free. You run the maps as you pick them up from the ground. You don't have to alch, you don't have to sextant, you don't have to do anything. You favorite City Squares on half of your favorite slots, you favorite Bazaar on the other half. The main reason I picked Bazaar is because I believe it's the fastest other layout connected to City Squares. I might be wrong on that one, I haven't done a lot of testing. Infested Valley might come close, actually, so if that's something you want to try and optimize for even more, there you go. I've decided to do it like this just because I don't want to deal with trade. It is more inefficient to do it this way, but then it's a self-contained loop and you can literally do this forever without stop or until they patch it out. Okay, so now that we've gone over the details and how I've set everything up and how much I've made, the real question is, how do you know if the strategy is right for you? Well, the first thing to consider is loading times. You are going to be loading in and out of instances a lot. It's one of the main parts of the strategy. So if your computer struggles with loading screens and you have long loading times, this might be something that you want to avoid. I know that there are ways to optimize for loading screens by turning off MTXs and such. I haven't really tested too much of it, but the bigger point is just if you have long loading screens, this might not be the strat for you. And then the second thing to think about is how fast your build is. The faster you can get your character to the boss and kill the boss, the more money you make. So if you have something that doesn't really have great single target or requires you to kill a lot of enemies before you get some speed, this might also be a strategy that you want to avoid. But if you have a character that can zoom straight to the boss and instantly kill the boss, leave the map and go again, this would be a very good strategy for you to do. So earlier in the video, I told you to ignore this number right here, because this is how many exalts per hour I make on my setup. Now, before you get into changing your whole tree and buying regret points and just switching out everything and then finding out that the strategy isn't for you, here is a tip for how you can kind of get an estimate of how many exalts per hour you can expect to get on your build doing the exact same strategy. So before you change anything, what I recommend you do is I recommend you run a few city squares. The more you run, the better your estimate. The better estimate you'll get. Get the average time it takes you to open the map, get to the boss, kill the boss, and leave the map in seconds. And then whichever other layout you decide to do, in my case it's Bazaar, do the same, run a few maps, get the average time that it takes you to complete each map. And then you can input those numbers into these two fields. You'll get the average time for both maps, or the average for doing the two different layouts. And then in here you should see a rough estimate of how many exalts per hour you can expect to make from the strategy. I don't think that you should rely on this number completely. I know I did 1,400 maps, but that's still a relatively small sample size for a strategy like this. But I do think that this is the best estimate that I can give you for how many X per hour you can expect to make from the strategy with your build before changing and committing to it. Okay, so I think we've gone over everything. I think that's everything you need to know. I know this was a really quick video. There's not much to the strategy. Once you've set up your Altas Tree, it's literally just free currency. You don't have to do anything. After the tree has been fixed, it's free money. So this might be something that you want to consider. I've been having a lot of fun with it, and I do think I'm going to try to min-max it a little bit more. Maybe build a sort of lab runner that can get to the bosses in no time at all and just one-shot them. We'll see though. I don't like all the loading screens. If you do decide to do this strategy, I do recommend that you try and sell whatever you get in bulk on trade discords, TFT or the other PoE trade discord. You're gonna have a bad time trying to sell them on the normal trade site. You do want to sell them in bulk, otherwise it's gonna take you a lot of time to get rid of everything. If you have any questions, or if I've missed anything, take a look at the top pinned comment. If there's anything that I missed, I'll put it there. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section, ask right there, or you can ask me over on Twitch. I'm live 5 days a week. If you ask me there, I'll be able to answer you immediately. But I do think that that's everything you need to know for the strategy, and I hope you enjoy it if you do decide to follow it. We're probably going to patch it out next patch, so you have limited time to experience the crazy boss rush that we have this league. But okay, that's it from me. My name is Sniz, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye. First layout. Yeah, true. But if we're fast, it doesn't matter, right? If we're fast, it doesn't matter. Okay, what is this? Video game. Yo, video game? Excuse me? Bro. Yikes.